I've personally worked with over 600 different print on demand brands, and these are the things that are working the best for them in 2025. And in this video, we're going to be uncovering those best practices so that you're able to apply them to your own print on demand business, doing it within the categories of the niches that they're choosing, aka which markets they're targeting, what kind of products they're selling, how are they presenting their products with their mockups. And fourth, we're going to talk about the designs, the styles, the trends, what's really captivating people the most right now. Then we're going to talk about the marketing. What are they doing in terms of their strategy? How much are they spending? What platforms are they currently on? And then finally, we're going to talk about the mindset and how these people are just approaching the business slightly differently than the average. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Heckman. I've been doing print on demand and e-commerce for the better part of a decade. Generated over $25 million in sales. And so everything we're about to cover is going to be corroborated by my own experience as well. And so we're going to break things down into two buckets. So first, we're going to look at the niche under the bucket of people who have been less than successful. And I don't say any of this to throw shade at anybody, just defining success how you want. In this video, we're going to define it as people who have ultimately gotten their brand from $0 to $10,000 plus in total sales, opposed to, on the other end, people who are still trying to make, their first handful of sales. And the good news is that there's a lot of common pitfalls that are very easily avoidable just when we're aware of it and we keep an open mind. So first off, within the niche category, the people that are having the hardest time right now are the ones who are going after more general stores. Like if you look at the niche or look at their store, it's not very apparent like who it is that they're specifically trying to serve. It could kind of be for, me. It could be for my mom. It could be for somebody down the street. There's not really like a clear direction, which is when I started out, my first store, it looked like I was trying to be Amazon, the everything store. And then on the flip side, we see people who are going too niche, where they don't start with, yoga. They start with, Bikram hot yoga, which I think that's just another kind of hot yoga, but they just start way too down the rabbit hole. So there's like that Goldilocks zone where you don't want to be cross niching. Like to give an example would be, you don't want to be a yoga and outdoors store. You don't want to go that route where it could be a lot of different things or just like overly generic, just good t-shirts or defined by an art style. Like vintage is not a niche. So it needs to be something that actually resonates with people, like a topic. Bumper sticker test that we've talked about before is a great way to judge this for yourself and make sure that you are actually in the niche. I've talked to a lot of people where they're in a good niche. It's not too niche. It's not too broad, but they don't actually know it themselves. So that really limits us in our ability to create really unique designs, which, as we're going to get to in just a moment, is one of the things that has really allowed some people to stand out like head and shoulders above the competition. Then on the flip side, the people who are having the most success are the ones who go with broad and or widely popular topics. So not so broad, meaning you're branching out between lots of different niches, but it's something that, everybody kind of has in common. Like outdoors is a good example. I would say that's probably the default option most people go with, either outdoors or, some version of that. Like yoga, for example, is a fantastic niche to get into still to this day, I think, or like mindfulness, positivity. And at the same time, the people who have hit 10K the fastest, they're in a niche that they themselves know really well. And this is powerful for two reasons. One, like we already mentioned, because it makes it way easier for us to create really unique designs that stand out. But two, it's about the sustainability of building a brand, right? Like if I pick, like we were doing our demo store, seasonal collections, that was a prime example of what not to do if you're me. Because making designs of flowers and, whimsical stuff, that's just not me. That's just not my personality. It's not what I find that interesting. In that case, we went with it, my wife wanted to do flowers and, spring designs. I want to do something like, I don't know, more outdoorsy, but like gender neutral. So we compromised and we decided to go with the flowers niche. That's just a joke. My wife is lovely. It was, if we're being honest, it was probably my decision entirely. And I just made a mistake. But anyway, moving on onto the products. And this is one that kind of gets glossed over, but then like the individual points. But when you really internalize these, it makes a huge difference. And this is in terms of just the product, like what category of products are they selling? And people who are having the hardest time are the ones that start off with many, many product types. It's basically, if you look at Printify or Printful or whatever provider, if it were to just explode onto their store, and there's just lots of, I'm laughing because it's so relatable. When I started, I thought, I want to build a brand, and brand in my mind at the time equaled Nike. Then I look at Nike, they have a wide variety of, products in their catalog. They have everything from shoes to, workout clothes to, underwear, like everything. And in my mind, I thought that's how you build a brand. But in reality, if I had rolled back the clock, I would have seen that, Nike, every brand, they normally start with just one main product type. They might have a line of products, but it's normally under the same general umbrella. On the flip side, the people that they do go with one product, and which is a good decision, just pick one product type because it is wildly different. This was a fallacy that I didn't realize until later on, but I used to think like I'm just going to get better at designing products, and I thought that designing a shirt was the same as designing a mug versus a sticker, and nothing could be further from the truth. There is definitely a skill set to be gained in just narrowing your focus, getting really exceptionally good at one product type, both in terms of your skill and your ability to execute on the designs, but two, knowing like what works and what doesn't. You just start to learn the nuances when you're not context switching between t-shirts, the stickers, the mugs, the phone cases, that sort of thing. But the second pitfall is if they do go with one single product, a lot of times they choose an unproven product, and that's just their entire store. And when I say unproven, obviously every product like on Printify or Printful, people buy it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have it as an option that they carry. But what I would say is I recommend starting with t-shirts because everybody wears them. The average person owns like 13 of them in their closet. They wear through them. They're highly giftable. It checks all the boxes. It's just they get talked about so much that I think sometimes we think we have to overcomplicate things just because we've heard it a lot for whatever reason. But when some people do start with a single product, they pick something completely off the wall. Like, while yes, people do buy it, do they buy enough of it for us to build a 7-figure business around? Even if the goal isn't 7 figures, I like to get into markets where I know that it has 7 to 8-figure potential because that tells me that it's going to be much easier to get to the 6-figure mark rather than if I go after a much smaller product or opportunity. That's just my personal preference, and it's also the trend that we've been seeing. Then on the flip side, it's one product type, primarily t-shirts, the people that are having the most success because they're able to go deep. They get really, really good at this. And like I said at the beginning of this point, that this is one of the subtle points that's easy to gloss over and then not really ingrain into us. But this is one of the key differentiators. Looking at, if you were to show me 100 stores that are fighting to get to their first $10,000 in sales, then show me stores that are flying past it, this would be one of the most apparent differences between the two. Now, next up, we have mockups. Now, mockups are when we have the design, like we chose t-shirts, for example, the mockup is how are we representing the design and the product. So if this is wall art or canvases, it would be, a photo of it hanging up in a living room, that sort of thing. The mockups that are performing the worst right now are the ones that look fake or overly photoshopped. We've noticed over the past 12 months even that people, like consumers, have gotten a really, really strong BS filter, you could call it. Basically, within a fraction of a second, they're able to tell if something is fake or, canva'd, if we can turn that into a verb. We're going to see an example of this in a second, but they're also crowded with too many other objects. So we'll come back to that in just a moment. Then on the flip side, the mockups that are performing the best are the ones that are the simplest and they're photorealistic. Now, to see 2 examples of this, one of them is a good example, and we'll look at this one first. So this is Yoga Stay. This was an example of a mockup that performed really, really well that we used on our brand. And I did not make this. I made this in partnership with a designer. And the reason that this works is, first off, imagine if you took away these objects, the mockup still works. And these objects are here adding to it. They don't detract from it or distract you from seeing the main design. And then there's high contrast between the background here to the shirt, and then from the shirt to the design. So there's 3 layers of contrast that we want. And the way that you can tell if you have this or not is simply just scroll like on a either Google Doc or ScalaDraw, whatever you want to use. Just scroll down and see like when you're looking at your mockup, what pops out to you first. And we do it on white because depending on where you're advertising, like we do it on Facebook, the majority of the feed is white. So this is representative of what's around your products when people are shopping. But anyway, we want to see when I scroll down, where do my eyes jump to? And in this case, we already know it's a good mock-up. My eyes pretty much jump right there. It doesn't go to the yoga mat. It doesn't go to the flowers or anything because these are positioned towards the bottom and these were added as a afterthought. And also it looks pretty photorealistic. I think we can make some improvements on there, but again, this is a older mock-up. The next we have History Tees mock-up. Really a high-performing brand, but in general, I'm not a giant fan of this mock-up because it kind of breaks the mold of everything we just talked about. One, you can immediately tell that this map is not real. This ruler is not real. These coins and the The telescope up here is also not real. So there's a lot of dead giveaways. And then in addition to that, there's things that draw my attention more than just the design in the center. So doing the same test, if we scroll down, like where do your eyes go to first? Me personally, my eyes go to the telescope up here. Is that, do you call it a telescope? Jack Sparrow telescope, we'll call it that. So I kind of go there, down here, and then in this design in particular, there's high contrast from the shirt to the design, so my eyes kind of jump there. But anyway, comparing these two side by side, one that's bright and vibrant and has high contrast from the background to the shirt to the design, those are performing the best. And a good way to do this is start with just the background and then the product, and then forget about all the supporting objects. I think when people are making their mockups for the first time, they tend to over-index on, okay, I'm in the yoga niche. That means I gotta have a yoga mat in there, gotta have yoga pants, that kind of thing. And they drop those in, and then they force the shirt and everything else to work around it. So keep it simple. Start with the background, then the shirt, then add in objects where it makes sense, but it should never detract from the overall aesthetic. Then next up, we have the design. So like what category of designs are currently performing the best? Well, actually, the worst first is one, and this is the most common by far, are designs that are obviously AI. What I mean by that is the art style in particular. So it's designs that are just have too many colors. It's a good graphic design, but it doesn't belong on a t-shirt. Like it's not something that a person would want to wear, 6 inches below their chin for 12 hours out of the day. Like there's a big difference between, or a subtle difference actually, I should say, between a design that's beautiful and belongs, hanging on a wall somewhere and people would be happy with it versus a design they would be happy 6 inches below their chin. And then AI concepts, something AI is decent at, getting better, but currently it just still struggles. Like concepts where you look at the subject or the icon or the graphic, then you look at the quote or typography and it's like, it's pretty close, but something's just kind of weird. It's not really something a human would ever say. Doesn't really pass, the human scan. Then on the flip side, the designs that are performing the best and like going viral, we've had a number of those recently that we're seeing, is they have niche specific typography, meaning that if I consider myself to be a history buff, looking at the design, the reference and the quote is something that one is not just AI slop, and two, it's something that only me being a history buff, I would actually understand. That's why working on history tees, it was so funny, like scrolling through a lot of our bestsellers. I worked with my dad on this brand, who's a huge history guy. A lot of the bestsellers I didn't even understand, which is almost the perfect barometer that we were in the right direction because it was niche, like historical references and jokes that I had to Google to be honest, to understand many of them. And the other art style that is performing the best are like the simpler vintage / retro. This is something that it's kind of like clothing styles. Well, no pun intended, literally clothing styles, where it comes in and out of trend, like things are in vogue, then they're not. And right now, simple / vintage / retro, those are great art styles to experiment more with. Then on the marketing side, people who are struggling the most are the ones who just kind of overspend. And this is talking specifically about Facebook ads. They tend to overspend. They just overly rely on the ads. And I did this a lot starting out, where I would put a lot of effort into a brand or a store, make my initial product catalog, and then I would launch it. And then I would think that all the work was done. And at this point, or not that all the work was done, I was happy to put in more effort. I just didn't know where that effort was best placed. And I thought, you got to spend money to make money. I just need to let the ads, run out more. I just need to give them, let them run for another 2 weeks. And then I'll reevaluate there. They need to optimize the ambiguous pixel, need to get that thing seasoned or whatever. And that's just not the case. Because on the flip side, people that are having the most success are the ones that are starting with a very small targeted test budget. And these budgets range from a couple $100s per month to I would say like $1,000. You don't really need a ton. And they, instead of relying on just the ad spend to improve performance, like, I didn't have good results after $100. Maybe it'll change after 1,000 and make no other, different, don't make any updates. People aren't doing that. The people that are having the most success, they spend $100, again, small test budget, then they look at the metrics. And the metrics could be bundled into to mean a lot of different things. Primarily, they just look at the cost per click, which is a metric that is readily available in the Facebook dashboard. And they see, okay, this design got cheapest clicks, this design got expensive clicks. Now I'm going to pause the ads and not continue spending. I'm going to save that budget. Instead, I'm going to go make, 25, 50 more designs like the ones that got the cheapest clicks. Then I'm going to also learn from the ones that got expensive clicks. So we aim for 50 cents to 75 is a good range. Over a dollar is typically on the higher end, and designs we don't recreate more like. And they use this to start that iteration cycle. So then they spend a little bit, then they use that as feedback to then improve their products, and then they iterate again and again until eventually they get out of that cycle, and then they get to break even. And then when they're at break even, it's meaning that we're putting in like a dollar, getting roughly $2 back, so we're break even after cost of goods sold. Then that's a really exciting spot where things start to take off. And we're not going to talk about scaling in this video, but that's how they're starting off. And then finally, with their mindset, people that have been, again, people that are hardworking, dedicated, not like fooling themselves or thinking that this is get rich quick or anything like that. Like people that have the best of intentions and like have what it takes a lot of times, unbeknownst to them, sometimes have more emotional responses to feedback from the market than, best suits them. Next, they have short-term thinking, meaning they don't really give themselves a runway to prove this out. They think in terms of months instead of years. And just in any business, you're going to miss out and basically sell yourself short on the majority of the benefits of the business, because the vast majority of them come on the long tail end of your time running that business. For one quick example, this upcoming Black Friday, we already, as we prepare for it, we're planning like what email should we send, what ad should we run, what new product should we introduce for the holiday season. When we started out, it was all guesswork. We were looking at like case studies in the market, just trying to learn ChatGPT. And we tried a lot of different things. Some things worked, some things failed. Now this year, we get to do that whole same process, research. But in addition to that, we get to build on all the best practices. We already know what ads we want to run. We already know what emails perform the best. In addition to that, our email list and our customer base is so much larger than what it's last year. So that's just this Black Friday. Then imagine if we do that again next year, then the year after that, and then the year after. Like it just continues to compound with us just showing up daily and not seeking quick wins, like having long-term outlook. And then finally, the people that are most successful, they're extremely objective. They view feedback from the market as just data. They have a really long-term outlook on things, and they just embrace the learning process, which is exactly what you've done by watching through this lesson and learning what is currently working. And just know that this is from our experience. This is not rules of thumb, and these things do change. That's why it's important to stay up to date and just never stop learning. Keeping the perpetual student mindset is something that has served me the best, or I've gotten smacked in the face the hardest when I've forgotten it. But anyways, if you enjoy this kind of content and you want to learn more about what we do, we have a free 31 plus hour course on our channel. And we also have a free school community where we give away all of our resources and templates that we use to run our brand. And if you want to see more stuff like this, leave a comment down below letting me know what other videos or questions you'd be interested in learning more about. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.